So first of all, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the opportunity to join you on this. This is the first time I've had a chance to address you as this group, so I want to begin by expressing my sympathy and concern for the people who have been so impacted by this flood. Not only the folks in Calgary, but our friends and neighbors in the surrounding communities, High River, especially Canmore, and the First Nations. And second, to express my admiration and gratitude for the many people who are hard at work in response to this flooding. Your efforts are Herculean and very much appreciated. So the things that His Worship would like me to talk about are obviously relate to health, and I think there's three main things I'd want to go over. The first category is simply around safety, and I understand that that's been well covered off in terms of re-entry into one's home, what needs to be assured before one comes in. So it's maybe more a message for the people who've been away and are now coming home to this situation, again, to remind them that they need to be contacting the municipality to find out whether their power was off, whether their gas was off, and whether their sewers were backed up. That has to be verified before one can enter safely into the home. The second group of issues, I guess, is related to the cleanup. If you're back to stay and with just relatively minor things to do in the basement, then you're going to be thinking about food. So if the power's been off, you have to assume that your food in the fridge and freezers are not good and they need to be discarded. That needs to be discarded. If your food has been in an area that has been impacted by the floodwater itself, probably that food needs to be discarded as well. Any of the food that would have actually been flooded. The one possible exception would be canned goods, but you need to be assured that, in fact, the cans are whole, and then you need to be properly cleaned off with soapy water prior to opening them. I think the general message there is if you're not sure, probably you should be throwing it out. In terms of the cleanup, the first place to start, of course, is the basement, or wherever it'll be the basement where it's most likely to have been impacted. And anything really that's been soaked needs to be gotten out of there, floor coverings, furniture, and so on. And the sooner the better, because you want to get it out before the mold has a chance to grow and it can be, the subsurface is properly cleaned. If the walls are impacted, you're going to have to take the walls out and clean between or within the wall cavities as well with soapy water, and then disinfect with bleach, a bleach solution, weak bleach, 1 part Javex and 10 parts water. 9 parts water, and the surface, that includes the surfaces beyond where the water actually was. So the walls above and the ceilings will all need to be cleaned and disinfected as well. For residents in homes that were built before 1985, there's an additional potential hazard related to the asbestos that would have been in some of the building products. So if your house is in that category, there will be additional material on our website and as provided by the municipality as well, how to deal with that. Again, it's best dealt with when it's still wet, because then nothing has gotten up into the air to breathe in, and that stuff should be ripped up and packaged, not just thrown out on the yard if possible. And then the final general area is one that's probably going to emerge more as this event drags on and people are recovering and trying to get back into normal semblance of their lives. And that's related to mental health. Everybody's been impacted in one way or another, and we need to be mindful that the stress is significant. We need to be reaching out to one another, to support one another, give feedback if it appears that somebody is behaving in a way that you don't expect, more stress than you'd expect. And yourself, you need to be very mindful of that and open to the caring comments of other people's. If things are getting out of hand, then it's important to seek help. Again, on the Alberta Health Services website, there's a number of excellent resources about the kind of reactions that people normally go through in this kind of situation, for parents how to help their children through it, and again, numbers in order to get the resources that you need for assistance. So that's all the things that I wanted to say up front. I'm happy to field any questions.
Okay, so Sean will help you with the questions, Dr. Musto. I'm going to see if I can fix these lights while you're there.
They're heating up, and they're going to stop moving.
Really?
Yep.
No, I've been here since the morning. and
It's been doing that?
all
Let me see what I can do.
We had to actually just go shut it off on that side while they're,
Anyway, keep going. You can start with some questions here.
Any questions for the doctor?
That's
The
good.
easiest press conference you ever done, Dr. Musto?
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have enough light now on me? All right, great. So we'll go with that, and we'll take a look at that back one that is going on, what's going on there now. So, all right, folks, let's start by talking about water. My headline numbers have not changed much since our last conversation. The Bow River downstream of the Bearspaw Dam, in other words, Alderman Hodges' house, is 650 cubic meters per second. The elbow downstream of the Glenmore Dam remains at 130 cubic meters per second. So at the confluence, Alderman Carr's house, the flow rates are been consistent at about 800 cubic meters per second. This is good. The rivers are now under our control. We're going to keep those rates relatively high for the next little while and bring them down slowly in order to avoid collapsing of the riverbank. Now, people are wondering about the taste and smell of the water. So uncharacteristically, I have props that I want to show to help you understand. So this is the raw water from the river that is currently going into the Glenmore water treatment plant. The turbidity, which is a measure of the particles floating in the water, is sitting at 1100 NTU. That is not Nenshi turbidity units. I believe that is national turbidity units. Is that right, Dan? That's pretty close. Yeah. It's a measure of turbidity. 1100 Nenshis. So this is what's coming out of the plant. This is the work that our city workers are doing. This is tap water from the Glenmore water treatment plant. The turbidity has gone from 1100 to 0.06. This is a bottle of water that you buy at the store. When you look at them, the turbidity is functionally identical. So it may be that the water here is tasting and smelling a little bit different than it normally does, but that's because we're working hard to go from this to this. And of course, you know what's coming. The water is entirely safe to drink. It's all good. So, the folks who work in water services are working hard as they are every single day to be able to get you safe, clean drinking water. I'll digress for just a moment. It's a gift that we have safe, clean drinking water. 1 billion people in the world don't have that. And we've got hardworking people who every single day are providing that, and they continue to provide it. But we need to give them some help. You can imagine that this to this is a lot of work. And as a result, the water treatment plants are really overwhelmed. They're doing an enormous amount of work, but they're still doing it. So that's why water restrictions are so important. The less we have strain on the water treatment plants, the easier it is for them to deal with this. So I'm really calling upon all of you. I'm reminding you that outdoor water bans are still in effect, and I'm calling on everyone to restrict their use of water in the non-flooded areas as best as you can. If you're in the flooded areas and you need to do outdoor watering to get mud off your lawn or your sidewalk, of course, no one's going to prosecute you for that. But we need everyone else to be particularly careful in their use of water, and I hope that people will continue to do that. And yes, guy washing car outside on Twitter, you can't do that. You can't do that when we don't have outdoor water restrictions in effect. It is, in fact, illegal. So don't do that. Now, if your car is covered in mud and dirt from the floods and you need to wash it off for safety reasons, of course, that's fine, and you can do that. But we're asking people not to do that. All right, power. Let's talk about power. We've got some good news on power. First, from NMAX's perspective, The total number of distribution customers without power that are serviced by the overhead system is about 3,000, to be specific, 3,261. The total number of customers without power that are serviced by the underground system, that's downtown, is about 9,796. That's huge differences from yesterday. That means the total is about 13,057. That means we've attached another 5,500 people to the system since our last report. That's huge. And most of the residences outside of the downtown are really starting to get there. Crews are currently working in three remaining communities, Inglewood, Riverdale, Bowness. And that is terrific. Now, when we get power back to the neighborhoods, it doesn't necessarily mean that there will be power to your home. Your home still might be socked. In other words, there is a literal sock on your electrical meter, and we need to do a quick inspection in order to turn the power back on in your house. So, what you need to do is tell us if you require that inspection. You can call 311, you can go to the website, you can use the 311 mobile app, or you can go to the reentry center in your neighborhood and tell them that you require that inspection. Now, you have to be home. So if you're home when the inspector comes, the city inspectors will go to your basement, they'll check it, see if it's safe, and if it's safe, they will energize your home. They are also, as you heard, they are actively working in Inglewood, Riverdale, and Bowness, so they might just come to your house before you having to do that. And they will continue on Twitter at NMAX and on the NMAX website at nmax.com/outages. They will try to give you windows of when they're going to be in each neighborhood so that you can try hard to be home. If you're not home when the inspector comes by, what they'll do is they'll isolate your home. So in other words, the other neighborhoods, the other houses in your block, they can probably turn back on, but they can't turn yours on. So when you come back, same thing, call 311, use the app, go to the website, and once they come and do the inspection, the inspector will approve your house. When it's approved, you call NMAX 514-6100 to have the power turned back on. All of this information is at nmax.com/outages. I do want to tell you that we do have some good news, though, on this front. Since the beginning of this event, we have had 848 individual service requests, people calling in on 311 or the 311 mobile app. Of those 841, 647 have been visited and dealt with. Only 171 remain from the existing ones. There's not a huge backlog. Our crews are working really hard and getting to those houses very quickly, and good for them. Yet another example of dedicated public service. I feel like we got so many of those. The other good news is that, if you recall, I don't have the map behind me, but you'll recall the T-zone that we've talked about with NMAX. The T-zone is 2nd Street west to Centre Street, the river to the tracks. So that's a lot of big office buildings. That includes, for example, the Suncor Centre in the Bow, the two tallest buildings in Calgary, and a bunch of other offices in the commercial core. And the good news is that all of the flag buildings in the T-zone have now been dealt with. NMAX is inspecting, I don't know what this means, master transformer, that means something. They're vacating the crews from the tunnels. Once they vacate the crews from the tunnels, they'll be able to flip the switch. Once they flip the big switch, I'm using really technical language here. Once they flip the big switch on the thingy that provides electricity, we will flip the little switches on the other thingies that provide electricity within each of the buildings. That is the technical term. And we will have that portion of downtown, with some good luck, mostly energized tonight. And that is fantastic news. Fantastic news. Okay. We have to talk about safety, folks. I think it's become, what do you call it, an internet meme or something like that, but I'm going to do it again. I don't believe I have to say this. If the thing runs on gasoline or diesel, you cannot run it inside your house. You will have a very bad day. So, if you're running a generator, if you're running a pump, it has to be run outside and it has to be vented well away from your house. We've had 2 more males in Bowness. Stuart Bordeaux probably has the real information for me. We've had 2 more males in Bowness who've succumbed to carbon monoxide. They're going to be okay. They're having a bad day. And crews report to me that as we are spending time in the neighborhoods doing these assessments, a very, very large number of people are running generators and pumps inside their house. Don't do that. Don't be a Nenshi noun. I'm tired of having to not use words that I really want to use. In addition, I will tell you that I spent some time with fire today with the Calgary Fire Department. They have, of course, been doing incredible, unbelievable, amazing work. For the people who put in their house, in the sign on their door, need electricity, need cute firefighter, we're working on it for you. They also said need wine, but they didn't say whether it was red or white, so we can't help. But I will tell you that fire has told me that while their call volumes are starting to get a little bit back to normal, they have completed over the last several days nearly 400 water rescues, 398 water rescues to be exact at last count. I asked them what percentage of those were legitimate rescues of people who needed to be rescued due to forces beyond their control, and what percentage of them are people that I might call Nenshi nouns. And they suggest that 80% of those rescues are people who got themselves into that situation by not following safety instructions. So please, 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 please don't be a Nenshi noun. Take the strain off of our emergency services so that they can get to work in getting people back into their homes. I have quite a lot to talk about in terms of traffic and travel. We're making really significant progress. Our colleagues in roads are doing great work through the downtown core. 70% of the road network in the flooded area has been restored. That's up from 50% this morning or at lunchtime. And approximately, this is amazing, approximately 730 lane kilometers of the downtown core have been swept and cleaned. That's up from 500 at lunchtime. So, my number one message on traffic is still, we've got significant congestion throughout the city. Another 2 days, folks. For another 2 days, let's try and avoid as much travel as we possibly can. I'm asking employers throughout the city, not just downtown, if it's at all possible for your employees to work from home, let them work from home. If you can help set up carpooling within your place of employment, that would be extremely helpful. Folks, as best you can, take transit, walk or cycle to your locations. I will tell you that we have done a couple of things which I think will be useful. Although portions of downtown are still either inaccessible or access is restricted. In other places, parking is restricted because parking garages are flooded. So again, we want to stay off the roads entirely, but in particular, if you need to get downtown, we have set up some alternatives for you so that you don't have to drive into the downtown core. We've established 14 of what we're calling park and bike stalls. They're in all 4 quadrants of the city. They allow people to drive their cars and park there for free for the day, and then walk, bike, or carpool into the downtown. They're all located within 5 to 7 kilometers of downtown. If you're a bike rider, that's a 20-minute bike ride. But you can also use these as places to meet your carpool. Also to walk. The weather is nice. The goal is to relieve some traffic volume, and I especially want to thank 2 private sector folks who've donated their parking lots. One is SAIT Polytechnic, who has opened up P1 lot on the south end of campus, and the Mayland Heights Shopping Centre. Oh, that's a nice hill to bike on to come downtown, for opening their parking sites free of charge as well. And you can find those maps again at calgary.ca. Just search park and bike. They're not necessarily just for biking, but that'll be okay. Signs will be in place to identify the lots. While we're on the topic of parking, the Calgary Parking Authority is easing restrictions on parking in back lanes, and the reason for that is because we're really finding that in communities where there's cleanup efforts underway, there's a lot of heavy equipment, there's a lot of dumpsters, there's a lot of things being parked on the street, as well as debris and regular garbage. And it's really hard for the waste crews to come through and collect the stuff off people's front lawns. So as best you can, park in the back lane, park on your driveway if that's not where the debris is, try to park off the street so that those waste and recycling crews can come through. Because remember, even if you normally have waste pickup in your back, we're asking you to put the debris on your front lawn. The garbage trucks will go down your main street. So try and get out of there as best that you can. Okay, and thanks very much to our friends at Calgary Parking Authority for doing that. I have very good news, but I hesitate to do it because I don't want you to actually act on this good news. And the good news is that our crews working on McLeod Trail in both directions are amazing. We love them. They've done incredible work. And as of 5 a.m. tomorrow, McLeod Trail will be open in both directions into the downtown core all the way to 4th Avenue. You remember the pictures before of the road having crumbled away. The fact that it is open is huge testament to our colleagues in Calgary Roads and the work that they're doing, but I still don't want you to use it. McLeod Trail will be open, by the way. 4th Avenue, including the flyover, 5th Avenue and 6th Avenue will all also be open, but they are open only for local traffic. In other words, they're open only for people who have a need to be in the areas that they directly service. Traffic lights are still not operational in many parts of downtown. You have to treat those as four-way stops. Portable stop signs have been set up, but you have to do that. The road is not ready for regular rush hour traffic. So we're still asking people, if you can avoid working downtown or being downtown, avoid it, and if you have to go, exercise extreme caution. So access is really restricted for local traffic, emergency crews, Calgary Transit vehicles, building owners and tenants and property managers who need to assess their buildings, and the recovery crews from the city and the private sector who are working incredibly hard to make this work. Transit. Transit is slowly getting back to normal. Thank you, everyone, for your patience on that. The modified C trains are back in service. That is awesome. Go to calgarytransit.com for more information. Parking. We've been hearing about some real challenges from emergency response teams getting around communities. We've talked about trying to stay off the road. I should say a couple other things that I should have mentioned a bit earlier. Keep fire hydrants accessible by not parking vehicles or placing containers too close to the fire hydrants. Park as close to the curb as possible. If you must park in the front, and of course use utmost safety when operating heavy equipment near homes and businesses. City employees. City employees are reminded to check calgary.ca. There's a link right there on the blog for city employees. If you haven't yet contacted or been contacted by your supervisor, we should make that happen. And I want to let people know that for city services, paying your property tax bills, accessing city services, NMAX, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We have now set up 4 temporary city service counters where you can get all the services that you could normally get at City Hall. There's one in each quadrant. I won't give the exact addresses now, but in the southwest, the Rose Con Arena. In the northeast, the elections office, which is near Deerfoot Mall. In the southeast, the Forest Lawn building, that's on 17th Avenue, southeast near 36th Street. And in the northwest, the Georgina Thompson Library. And you can access all city services there, though I will remind you that our colleagues, what was I going to say? Yes, our colleagues in DBA and Development and Business Approvals are obviously not doing building inspections that are not flood related. So those requests we won't be able to do. And just so you know how hardworking our city staff are, I thought you would enjoy this. Our planning team, the Corporate Properties Application Group, it looks like they are meeting in the food court at Chinook Center. So we are being extremely creative in how we can make this work and make sure the work of the city continues. Someone told me this picture was actually taken at the food court at Sunridge Mall, but I don't think they have a carousel. I think that's Chinook Center. Someone can correct me if I'm incorrect about that. It is Chinook. So I was listening to the radio. News Talk 770. Okay, maybe they gave me the tape and I wasn't really listening to the radio, but it is News Talk 770. And I heard some beautiful tape, and I want to share it with you. Nancy Diamond, who lives in Earlton. Nancy Diamond, who lives in Earlton, is trying to deal with a lot of trouble right now, and she says, we can't control Mother Nature, but we can control how kind we are to each other. And that's really the message I want to leave with this briefing with today. I've said it before, but a lot of our neighbors are going to be in a lot of pain over the next couple of days. And it's our job to help them in 2 ways. It's our job to help them with our hands, to go to a stranger's door and say, can I help you clean out your basement? I heard from a young man in Sunnyside today, and he said he had so many people ring his doorbell, and he didn't need any help, and he said, thank you, we're okay, we've got what we need, and they just went to the next house. Let's see that happening in all our flood-afflicted communities throughout this community. So let's use our hands, and let's also use our spirits. And let's make sure that we are staying positive for our neighbors, and we're reminding them that the community looks after them, that the community cares for them, and that the community loves them. So let's stop it there. Do we have any questions?
Before you wrap that up.
Oh, what have I got now? New news. Didn't I already do that?
No.
Yeah, I really did.
Did you?
I really did. Okay, let's take a poll. How many remember that I just gave all the service center locations? Northeast, northwest, yeah. We can still have fun. Any questions?
Can I ask about sinkholes?
Sherry?
Can we get a better feel from roads about how many we have and the potential hazards? Because if we do, I think it was earlier today you were mentioning the dangers.
Yeah, on the riverbanks. Can you take that one, Chief Burrow? Yeah, please.
Roads has been doing a number of repairs on sinkholes. The last number I had heard was that there were 40 that they were working on. I know for a fact that the Fifth Avenue flyover right now, they've just finished paving and repairing a couple down in that area. That's going to be a constant problem for a period of time. You have to remember we talked earlier this morning about the drainage in the buildings and the fact that the ground is saturated. Along with that saturation, there may be some additional underground channels that weren't there before from the river. So we're seeing sinkholes in locations where they weren't previously. Over the next few months, we will probably see recurrent sinkholes in the downtown core and Beltline area.
So be careful. And we'll fix them when we find them. But it will make a lot more sense, particularly really close to the riverbanks. He's talking a lot about groundwater.
About 70 repairs at the moment.
7-0?
70.
So we've been repairing about 70 sinkholes so far, and given the ground conditions, there will be more. So we just got to be careful, and we'll be on it.
For sure.
4-0 yesterday?
Yesterday, yeah.
Wow. Gary?
I'm just wondering if you could confirm one of our stories here that the Bonnybrook sewage headworks building has been disabled, that solid waste is not being treated, and that there's leakage from the plant.
Mr. Limeker? We'll call up the Director of Water Services, Dan Limeker. I will say that, as Mr. Limeker mentioned yesterday, there is some sewage discharge into the river, which is not uncommon in conditions like this. And the important thing is that the folks downstream know how to deal with it, just as we're dealing with it when it comes to us from upstream. Dan?
Yes, thank you. This question came up yesterday, I think, as well. Indeed, so just to give some context, we have 3 wastewater treatment plants in the city of Calgary. 2 of them are fully operational. We've diverted as much flow as we can to those 2 plants, and indeed, one of our plants, excuse me, was inundated by the river water, which has since receded, and now we are recovering the operation of that plant as quickly as we can.
So that's the headworks building?
Well, the Headworks building actually was only marginally affected. It was really the majority of the plant that was downstream of the Headworks building.
So is it operational or is it not right now?
It's not fully operational at this time. It'll take us some time to recover it, actually. Water is now actually flowing through the plant, but the treatment process isn't operating at the level that we'd like it to.
What percentage, can you give us an idea?
Percentage of...
Treatment.
It's hard to put in terms of percentage. I can tell you that we are working closely with Alberta Environment on the effluent that we are releasing, or how the plant is performing. It's not meeting guidelines.
50%, 20%, 10%?
Again, hard to put in percentage. It would be a low percentage. It's not treating wastewater very well at all right now. Yeah.
Like less than 50%, less than 20%? What's the number?
It's not meeting guidelines, Gary.
You don't know the number, Vicky? Do you know what the number is?
You just said
Well,
you can't.
that's-
You just said you can't put a number to it. Gary.
It's not, I think what I'm hearing is that it's just, the percentage is not how you'd measure it, because you talk about 10% of the water or 10% of the standard. And so, the point is, it's not meeting the standards, and we gotta fix it. Anyone else? Yes?
Do you have room in the landfill for all the dump, or for the tons of garbage that you're gonna have to take out there, especially like if now you're allowing the slide system to be picked up and dumped
We do.
there?
We do. We had that question at noon today as well, and so we're probably going to accept the amount of material in the landfill over the next month that we normally accept in a year. But unlike many cities, and Mr. Griffiths hates it when I say this, but we are blessed with a lot of landfill space. And certainly there will be some operational challenges. We're staging stuff at the landfills so that we can recycle the metal and so on as best we can. It would be much easier if we could deal with this on an orderly basis, but we will be able to accept them. And Mr. Griffiths suggested this morning, and I'll repeat, that if you've got appliances and so on that you need to get rid of, and you can hold back on those briefly while the landfills are dealing with everything else, you know, the organic stuff and the stuff that's going to rot. That would actually be very, very helpful. It'll give us a chance to get into the metal recycling piece. Electronics recycling, again, if you have electronics to recycle and they're small, just take them to the recycling depots that you normally would. You know, they're located all over the city. You can find those online. There's one particularly good one at Kerry Barracks where you don't have to get out of your car and they'll just deal with it for you. But there are many of them. And so we're hoping that people will be responsible in all of that, but we'll get through this one. Mr. Griffiths had also mentioned this morning that if you are disposing of appliances that have doors, refrigerators, freezers, and so on, remember you cannot leave those out unless you take the doors off or you secure them shut. You don't want kids climbing in there and getting trapped. So that would be a horrible tragedy. So if you are doing that, make sure you're being safe. Did I miss anything, Dave? No, that's good. Okay, sorry, Dave. I should have just called you up. You could have said all that. While we're on the topic of landfills, I have heard 1 or 2 reports of hauling companies charging people tipping fees, even though the landfills are not charging the tipping fees for flood damaged goods. Hauling companies, you're being very naughty if you're doing that. Don't do that. Make sure that your customers have those savings passed on to them. Others?
Sir, do you have, or anyone on the team, I guess, have detail about these water rescues? What are they in relation to? Are they actually on waterways, or?
A bit of both. Some of them are people who, you know, there's a few that have been outside of the city that the Calgary Fire Department has assisted on. You know, someone who might have been on top of a motorhome for 5 hours, someone who might have been washed away in their vehicle. The majority of them, I think, are rescues from people's homes that have been flooded that did not evacuate. And there are, yes, there are some on the waterways, and you know how that makes me feel.
But those are the minority.
Well, apparently, as I'm told, that 80% of them are people who should have known better. I don't have a better breakdown than that. 20% are people who got into a situation fully out of their control, and 80% were people who did not heed safety warnings.
And how big of an issue is the generator and the pump indoor issue in terms of the carbon monoxide?
We've had 6 people. We've had 6 people go to the hospital in 2 separate cases. 4 yesterday and 2 today. Neither are life-threatening, but I don't want to hear any more of that. Those people have had bad days. They got better things to do, and we should try and avoid that as much as possible. But I did hear today from some of our colleagues who are out in the communities doing the cleanup that they saw a lot of them, and they had to haul them out of there. So hopefully we won't have to do that. All right, I think that's it.
With
Oh,
that in
sorry,
mind,
Gary,
there's
go
only
ahead.
been one sort of related fatality in the entire flood of the last 6 days. How do you account for the fact that we were lucky enough not to have any further tragic incidents?
It's a miracle, but it's also a miracle that results from a lot of people's extreme hard work. I just noticed the deputy chief is here. Did you want to say anything else about the water rescues before I go on? Yeah, come on up, come on up. I'm sorry, you're right out of my line of sight. I didn't notice you there. Come on up. This is Acting Fire Chief Ken Hislop.
So early on, we were called to assist for 2 out-of-town water rescues, one on Longview, where a woman was on top of a camper. Due to the drive time, by the time we got there, the woman had gone under, but subsequently another man was found on top of his truck, and our aquatics team worked with a Kananaskis helicopter to sling out and rescue the person off the truck. And on the way back from that call on Thursday, they stopped in Okotoks to assist Okotoks Fire with a man who was on top of his mobile home for approximately 5 hours while the water rushed through the mobile home. And our crews set up a system and went out and rescued him from that. Predominantly, most of the other 20% of true rescues were people who were washed away close to banks, had fell in, were trying to drive their cars through and had to be rescued out. There was a few people who tried to swim across the Elbow River to get to the other side, things like that. But a lot of the 80% were people who were stranded, did not evacuate when they were told to evacuate, and then were caught behind water lines. And some of the vulnerable people, some of the elderly, old, and younger people that we had to get out for their safety, and not so much ferrying those people that were stuck behind the lines.
Thanks, Ken. So back to your question, Gary. The question was, how is it that we've had one fatality that may or may not be related to the water, and really so few serious injuries? And I was saying it's a miracle, but it is a miracle that is the result of enormous amounts of hard work by a lot of people. Enormous amounts of hard work by my city colleagues to make sure everyone is safe, and enormous amounts of hard work by citizens who are working hard to ensure their own and their neighbors' safety. You know, I know I sound like a school teacher up here when I tell people to stay away from the riverbank, to keep out of downtown and so on, but people have been incredibly cooperative. And it's really that human factor, more so than the water, that is keeping everyone safe. And I think that is the important thing for us to remember. You know, people around the world are looking at us right now. Chief Burrell is going to be the star of many case studies at business schools about management of crises going forward. But it's mostly because human beings are looking after one another. And I think that's the important thing. So pay attention to our advice and we'll move from there. And late breaking news. You see, the longer these briefings go, the more exciting news I have for you. Late breaking news. In order to support flood relief efforts and in order to help families that might be going stir crazy, particularly because there is no school right now, I am very, very happy to announce that from June 26th to June 28th, there will be free drop-in recreation programs for children on a first-come to first-served basis, first-come, first-served basis for children 6 to 12 years old. Those will go from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. at 5 locations: the Wildfire Arts Center, the Bob Behan Pool, where I learned to swim badly, the Shoaldice Pool, the Inglewood Pool, and the Killarney Pool. First come, first serve. More information at calgary.ca. I'll remind you as well that most Calgary Library branches are open, and we will be able to get the family together and get you out of the house doing some stuff while the kids aren't in school. I will have some news for you tomorrow on the status of our summer camp programs. We know that people are very anxious to figure out how those will work, particularly at those leisure centers that are currently acting as reception centers. And I'll have some news on what's going on about that tomorrow as well. Okay? Thank you all very much. I'm not sure we'll have an evening briefing tonight. Watch your email. Depends on whether we've got any news. But thank you all for continuing to tell these stories and keep people informed.